Welcome to Built to Go, a van life podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Wagg, coming to you from the College of Curiosity. This time it's episode 297. And hey, I screwed up. No, seriously, I made a serious mistake last episode, and I'm not only going to correct it, I'm going to expand upon it, because this is the big battery episode. We're also going to talk about creating your own podcasts without speaking, a product review of a survival kit that is good, but you don't need to buy it. Last week, I said something that was just wrong. Or last week, all right, we'll get into this first. First, I am sorry, my schedule is a mess, and the podcasts are not going to be as regular as they were, and I apologize for that. If this continues much longer, I'm going to suspend Buy Me a Coffee and turn off everyone's memberships, because I will no longer be earning your donations. But we'll see what happens. Next week's podcast is going to be a pre-recorded one that I think is actually pretty important. It's a conversation between me and a professional in the mental health arena, talking about loneliness and AI in loneliness, which I think is very interesting. We recorded it back at Van Fest in February, and I'm going to send it to you next week because I will be at RMSS and doing other things. So I screwed up. I said that lithium iron phosphate batteries had replaced lithium ion batteries in most everything, and that is not even close to being true. In fact, it's utterly wrong. I know how I made this mistake, and it's because my focus on batteries is mostly for, bulk storage for van life. And it is true that in nearly all cases, lithium iron phosphate has replaced lithium ion technology for buying 100 amp hour, 400 amp hour batteries, whatever. But lithium ion batteries are still ever present. They're still being made, and they have advantages over lithium iron phosphate. So what I'm going to do with you now, as a way of saying I'm sorry, but also as a way of educating myself and hopefully some of you, is go down all the different battery types there are and what they're good for and what they're not good for. And this is an extensive list. We're going to cover every technology in rechargeable batteries that are being used today. So each battery type has pros and cons. And it's where the pros of a battery have been replaced by another technology. That's when they disappear. That's why we don't typically have, say, NiCad rechargeable batteries anymore, because they had this bad memory problem where if you used the battery down to 80% and recharged it, it would only remember the 20%, and you would never be able to use the 80%. So that technology is, 40, 50 years old now, and that's gone. We don't use that anymore. So now I've identified seven battery technologies that we typically use. This is rechargeable batteries. I'm not going to talk about alkaline batteries, the kind of batteries we typically use in van life. So the first one that just about everybody has is a flooded lead-acid battery. This is ancient technology. These things were developed when the primary use for batteries was telegraph. The only people who had batteries were people who were telegraph operators, and they experiment with a whole bunch of different ways of storing electricity, all the way from Leyden jars, and anyway, it's an interesting history. But flooded lead-acid batteries are what you will find in almost every vehicle to start the engine. It's a really old technology, and why hasn't it been replaced? I mean, it's got some bad qualities. You can only use 50% of it. If you go down below 50% of its capacity, you can actually damage it. It doesn't have that long of a cycle life. You can get maybe 300 to 500 discharge and recharge cycles out of it. It's fairly safe if you're careful. I mean, it does vent hydrogen gas, and it's full of acid, but these are typically stored outside the vehicle or in vented compartments, and, we know what to expect with them. They're also fairly cheap, and they last a few years. But over the cost of 10 years, which I think is an important thing to look at, how much will this technology cost me over 10 years, they're actually kind of expensive. And the reason that we still use them is because they have this unique characteristic that no other battery really has. And that is that they can dump an amazing amount of power all at once and then recharge that amount pretty quickly, which is exactly what you want when you're starting an engine. You turn the key, you start the engine. That battery is powering your entire engine through gearing and reduction, etc. It is powering a motor that is turning over the entire engine, which is an incredible amount of power. And a large portion of the battery's capacity is used up when you start the car. That's why if you start the car and turn it off, start the car, turn it off, if you do that just a few times, you're going to kill the battery. All the other technologies really don't have the ability to do that. This is your starter battery. It's for starting. That's it. It also maintains voltage while you're driving. I mean, obviously you have an alternator, but the battery is kind of the buffer for the alternator. If you're driving at night and it's cold and you have the defroster on and the heater on and the windshield wipers on and the lights are on and all that, you actually may be drawing more power than the alternator can produce, say when you're stopped at a light or something, and the battery provides a buffer there. But I think we understand lead-acid batteries. They're not the best choice for leisure batteries, house batteries, etc. The next one, I'm going to talk about this briefly, is the calcium lead-acid battery. If you have an old battery charger, or you might even see a setting on it for calcium, this was kind of a supplemental technology to flooded lead-acid. And in fact, a lot of lead-acid batteries today are calcium. They use calcium technology to slightly alter the chemistry of the battery. But the term has kind of fallen away, so you can just ignore that. Just know that you have a flooded lead-acid battery. And that's it. Why is it called flooded, by the way? Well, it's because it literally is flooded. It's full of liquid. These are the kind of batteries that even if they say zero maintenance, you are supposed to top up with distilled water every once in a while. And if you tip them over, they can leak. That's why they're called flooded. Then there's gel batteries. So gel batteries were an interesting technology. They're very similar to lead acid. They're actually a little bit heavier than lead acid, so that's a downside, but they had an increased cycle life. They were better for RV uses or even like trolling motors, things like that. You couldn't discharge them any more than a flooded lead acid battery without damaging them. They would last longer. Also, they were safer. They wouldn't leak, which is good. However, they were expensive, and over 10 years, they were, of all the battery types I'm mentioning, the most expensive option. So you can still find them out there, but they're pretty much an obsolete technology at this point because they have been replaced by AGM, which is absorptive glass mat, which is the same kind of idea. It's a flooded lead acid battery, but instead of having actual liquid in there, there's a mat that holds the electrolyte and it won't leak. AGM is basically a safer version of flooded lead acid, and it has some slightly different characteristics. It's a little bit heavier, and it charges a little bit faster, which is good. It's still only 50% usable capacity, but it does have a longer cycle life. It has the longer cycle life of gel, where you can recharge these things 50 to 1,000 times, which makes them better for RV use. Their safety is good, and they're not that expensive. They're a little bit more expensive than the traditional flooded acid batteries, but they're not terrible. However, over 10 years, they get pretty expensive. AGM is a good technology when you are considering situations where you're going to be in the cold because they don't need to be heated. You can charge these batteries below freezing, which is something that all the lithium technologies have trouble with. You can do it, and we'll talk about that, but AGM is a good technology if you have something that's going to sit through the winter, for example. And there are people who prefer AGM over lithium for a bunch of reasons. I'm not sure those reasons are sound anymore, but you will find AGM in a lot of vehicles. Even brand new RVs will sometimes come with AGM batteries. And there are batteries that are kind of a compromise. They're an AGM battery that is sold as a hybrid battery where you can start your engine with it, but it also has some deep cycle characteristics. So it's a compromise in both ways. They're not as good as starting your engine as a traditional lead acid, and they're not as good as powering your leisure side of your van as a lithium battery. But it can do both. And sometimes if you have a small rig, you just want one battery for everything, that might be the one to choose. All right, let's get into lithium ion. So lithium ion doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, like an ion, everything's an ion. Fluoride is an ion, So why are they calling it that? It's because it's a group of different chemistries. It's not just one chemistry. But they call it lithium ion, and all the chemistries are similar enough that we're going to ignore them. This was a huge breakthrough in RV batteries when lithium ion came out, and also for everything. I mean, look at all the rechargeable devices you have in your life now. These did not used to be possible. There didn't used to be the ability to have, say, a rechargeable flashlight that was actually good, or to have the amount of power to power an iPad for 10 hours. I remember when iPads first came out in 2010, I was amazed that I could watch movies on this little thing for 10 hours. Well, it's lithium ion that made that possible. This was a huge advance in batteries, and it still is. So the advantages of lithium ion over, say, flooded lead acid are that it's much lighter. It's half as heavy, if not even less than that. It charges very, very quickly compared to lead acid, and it has a usable capacity of 90%. So you don't have to worry about, oh no, I'm at 50%, I better charge it. You can go all the way down to 90% with lithium ion and then charge it. People usually say 80%. That's like the safety feature. And you'll notice that if you have a phone, it will put it into low power mode at 20% usually, because 80% is a sweet spot. Actually, in both directions, charging to 80% and discharging to 20%, that's the best range for the longevity of the battery. You can charge it to 100%, and I do all the time, but that will shorten the life of your battery. But you're shortening the life of something that has a very long life, probably in your phone's case, longer than the life of your phone. Lithium-ion batteries also have much, much longer cycle life than any of the acid technologies. 1,000 to 3,000 recharges. Safety is the issue here, right? So lithium-ion batteries are less safe than any other technology we mentioned, because they store an incredible amount of energy in a small space, and it can let all that energy out at once in something called thermal runaway. And this is why you have all these announcements on airplanes, etc. There's a lot of energy there that can be let out if something happens, and that's usually a puncture. These batteries are in kind of a bag inside whatever device they're in, and if any oxygen gets in there, they will spontaneously combust, and bad things can happen. You remember the spate of scooters that would catch fire suddenly in people's garages and stuff? That was this technology in a poorly made application. So lithium ion is still useful for a lot of things, and in fact, the very topic I was talking about, which was these portable power banks, they're almost all lithium ion, not lithium iron phosphate. And I think that's very interesting. You're trading in safety for convenience, in that you can store a lot more power in a lot less area. If you were to replace, say, your iPhone or your laptop with lithium iron phosphate batteries, they would have to be bigger, because the battery would have to be bigger to have as much space. So I think that's my big mistake, was that I mistook that. I didn't realize that lithium ion still had a lot of advantages over lithium iron phosphate. Now, do you want to put it in your van? Do you want to find a bunch of lithium ion batteries and build a big battery bank in your van? I say no. I think lithium ion is a technology that you should never purchase unless it's already built into something you use. So if you use an iPhone, yeah, you've got a lithium ion battery in your pocket. Samsung, same thing. Your laptop, absolutely. Your power bank, yep, that's lithium ion too. The earbuds you put in your ears, yeah, that is lithium ion. I mean, basically anything rechargeable that's small is going to be lithium ion. All your tools, all that stuff, that's all lithium ion. And that was the mistake I made, and I apologize for that. But that said, in the context we're usually in, building power systems for our vans, lithium ion is not the right choice, in my opinion. The risk of danger isn't worth any of its advantages. And honestly, most of those advantages go away for that application. So let's get to lithium iron phosphate, which is the current recommended technology for batteries in vans. It is a little bit heavier than lithium ion for the amount of energy you get, but it maintains the very rapid charging capability, and it has a big advantage over cycle life. Lithium iron phosphates you can recharge many, many more times than lithium ion, meaning that a lithium iron phosphate battery will last longer. Safety-wise, it's excellent. It's a big battery. It can still have all the dangerous aspects of any big battery. If you short out the terminals and somehow the BMS fails, yeah, you can have a fire, sure. But compared to the others, that's it. It's just a bunch of energy that you have to manage. You don't have to worry about things like punctures or spills or anything like that. It is a very, very safe technology. And when you're worried about burning down your rig, yeah, you can't do better than lithium iron phosphate right now. But here's the thing that is missed. It's cheap. The typical cost per usable kilowatt hour of all the technologies we've mentioned is cheapest with lithium iron phosphate. Lithium still has this reputation of being expensive, and every time I hear somebody say, oh, I don't need any of that lithium stuff, I'm just going to go AGM, I have to remind them to look again, because while 5 years ago that might have made sense, it really doesn't these days, except in cold weather application. Over 10 years, it is definitely the cheapest. You will spend the least amount of money for energy over 10 years with lithium iron phosphate than any of the other technologies. Big caveat to all this. Lithium iron phosphate batteries cannot be charged below freezing. If you charge a lithium iron phosphate battery and it's below freezing, you will damage it. So there's a few different ways to handle this. The simplest way, and one that I think should have been there from the start but isn't necessarily, is the BMS should shut off charging if the battery freezes. And my first one didn't have that. It would completely let you ruin the battery if you charged it with no reason. And I don't understand why. The BMS is in there. Detecting low temperature is not difficult. I don't know. They missed it on that. But now most batteries have low temperature cutoff. They all had high temperature cutoff the whole time. Most of them have low temperature cutoff now. And that works fine. You have to wake up the battery in the spring sometimes. Either it will wake itself up after it gets above 50 degrees for a period of time, or you'll have to zap it with 12 volts to force wake it up. You basically jump start it, and that will wake it up. It's not a big deal. But what if you are in a situation where you're an avid skier and you go skiing on the weekends and you want to take your van or your truck camper or whatever, and during the week your van sits there and freezes, and then all weekend long you want to use the battery? How do you handle that? Well, they do sell self-heating batteries. Basically, you hook the battery up to solar, and it will use that solar energy to heat itself above freezing, and then it will continue charging all winter long. And this can work just fine, but of course it's using energy to heat itself at a time when there's the least amount of energy available. So it requires management. You can't just set it and forget it. Like, imagine if snow falls on your rig and covers the panels. Well, yeah, that battery will keep heating itself until it can't anymore, and then it's dead. And that defeats the whole purpose of that. You can just turn the battery off, and that works too, but then you have to heat it up. So for me, the way I handle this is I don't have self-heating batteries, but I do have the batteries in the living compartment, so that in the winter, if I want to use the living compartment, I simply heat it up before I use it and make sure the battery's at temperature, and then I keep it there the whole time I'm using it. It's a little bit tricky. I have done trips where I was sleeping in the van at night, but I was somewhere else all day, and I didn't want to heat the van all day long, and you can see why there's an issue here. Now, you can use the battery below freezing. It's just that you can't charge it, but the BMSs aren't set up like that. So you understand there's complexity with using these batteries in freezing conditions, and that is an argument against using these. AGM doesn't have any of these problems, and while it fails at everything else, it works better in cold weather, and that might be super important to you. The last one we'll talk about is the new one, sodium ion, which is very similar to lithium iron phosphate and just brand new on the market. They are for sale now. You can actually buy these now. And it has some benefits and some not so benefits. The biggest benefit is that it doesn't use lithium. Lithium mining really is not a great thing for the environment. It gives power to governments that you may not wish to get power to, etc. It's a problematic element, even though it's like one of the most common things on Earth. Getting it into a mineable form isn't. Although I heard they just found a massive amount in West Virginia, of all places. Anyway, there are reasons to get away from lithium, and sodium ion looks like it might be that answer. It is a little bit heavier. It does not charge as quickly. It has the same usable capacity. It has a little bit less cycle life, but not enough to matter. It's excellent for safety and has the added advantage of not destroying the environment. And it's getting to be fairly inexpensive. It's still more than lithium iron phosphate, but that may come down. We may end up with a situation where lithium iron phosphate is an obsolete technology replaced by sodium ion, but we'll have to see if we get there. And right now, its 10-year cost is still better than everything else, except not lithium iron phosphate. So with all that, what kind of technology do you think they use in electric vehicles, like, say, Teslas? Which of all those technologies do you think they use? Well, most of them use lithium ion because they need that power packed in as small a space as possible. Some of them are going to lithium iron phosphate. There's a few different ways they're doing it now. EV technology is still rapidly evolving, but I wanted to be sure that I corrected my mistake from last week and gave everyone listening a better understanding of battery technology. So, to sum up, you want to start your battery with some form of lead acid, and you want to power all the living stuff of your van with lithium iron phosphate. As for rechargeable devices, you're going to end up with lithium ion. You're probably not going to have a choice, and it's fine. Just be careful with those things and follow the instructions of the flight attendant, which are getting more and more restrictive, by the way. Oh, and before I go, let me just give you this interesting stat. If you have a 100 amp hour 12 volt battery, this is how much they weigh in the different technologies. So flooded lead acid, 65 pounds. Calcium, 65 pounds, same thing. AGM, 65 pounds. Gel batteries, 70 pounds. They weigh actually a little bit more. Lithium ion, 25 pounds. Lithium iron phosphate, 24 pounds. Sodium ion, 30 to 40 pounds. So you can see in there that the sweet spot is with the lithiums. Sodium ion is going to be a little bit bigger. But the difference in weight between a lithium battery and a flooded acid battery is pretty substantial. And sometimes that is actually what matters more than anything else. Thank you to Michael for the gallons of Flex Seal and Terry for the gallons of hot sauce. I think I'm going to mix them together and make some sort of squirrel deterrent. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's because you do not know about buymeacoffee.com/built-to-go. That's 2 T's, not 3, not 1. This is how we avoid ads on the podcast. When people feel like they wish to buy me a coffee, metaphorically, or anything else, because that's how we've set it up, they can do so at buymeacoffee.com/built-to-go. You can do just a one-time thank you, or you can become a member. And because of the folks doing that, like Michael and Terry and everyone else, we do not have ads on this podcast. And I will say again that if my schedule keeps slipping, I will suspend this program because I have an obligation to keep the podcast up if people are giving me money. And if I'm failing to meet that, no more money. That's how it works. Van life news. Well, I don't know if this is van life news necessarily, but it's news. It's a little bit of news. Last time I talked to you, I talked about my friend Joe, who's doing this amazing trip, and he is done now. He drove through all 48 contiguous states in a Tesla Model Y in full self-driving mode. Full self-driving mode. Basically, he was a passenger in the car as he did this trip. And I misstated a couple things that Joe corrected me on, which is that he was actually camping in the vehicle most of the time. In fact, he stopped and built Reflectix window covers, which on a Model Y is a bigger deal than it might seem because basically the whole thing is glass in there. But he slept in the car almost the whole time. And basically just put it in camping mode, which is one of these things that Model Y, that Teslas have and some other EVs, where you can put the thing in camping mode and you basically have air conditioning and heat all you want until the battery runs out, which is kind of cool. And he did this amazing trip. He set records doing this. It may be the first time anyone has done a trip where they've gone through all 48 states on full self-driving. He estimated the cost, and it was substantially less than gasoline. It wasn't inexpensive by any means. You know, when you're doing a trip like this, you have to use chargers that are on the road, and they cost a lot more than charging at home. So there's this kind of idea that EVs are free. And I think there was a program at one time where when you bought an EV that the charging stations were free, but that is not normal. Some of the charging stations are quite expensive and at times have cost more than gasoline. But right now that's not the case, that's for sure. So Joe did this amazing trip. It's kind of a harbinger of the future. I mean, right now we can say that we can have self-driving cars, and there's no reason this couldn't be a van, that will drive us from place to place without us having to do anything except pay attention. And this was through all kinds of driving. I mean, mostly he's on the interstates, of course. Driving on an interstate in the west of the U.S. is probably the easiest driving you can do. But when he got up northeast, lots of traffic, stop and go, things running out in the road. We actually talked to him, and he had an issue where a barrel rolled out into the road, and the car handled that. It avoided deer, things like that. And at one time he said that if the car wasn't driving, he would have hit the barrel. It was just one of those orange plastic barrels. It wouldn't have been the end of the world. But the car drove better than he could, which I think is important. People have this need for control, and they're afraid that I can't let the car drive for me. I have to be in control. But there's another thing out there called statistics, and statistics show that self-driving cars are actually a lot safer than human driving cars. So I don't know where this is going to go, but I found the trip very interesting. I congratulate Joe for trying this and doing something like this, because that's what pioneers do. That's what explorers do. And that's what people who are willing to take risks do. He definitely was in a risky situation where he could have broken down somewhere where it would have been very difficult to get a repair or even a tow. And he could have run out of power. If something had happened where his planned route was interrupted somehow, he might not have been able to get to another charging station. And there's ways to fix that too. And the same thing could happen with gasoline, right? Hey, I've got 50 miles left, and then something happens and you have to detour for 60 miles. Whoa. And while it's arguably a little bit easier to get gas delivered to your car than, a whole bunch of electric energy, there are ways to fix things. So anyway, kudos to Joe. Thank you for the correction, and I look forward to your next adventure, and I look forward to some of you listening doing this adventure in a camper van. Who out there will be the first to visit all 48 states in one trip in a camper van? Because right now, it's possible. I don't know that any of them have full self-driving yet, but eventually that will happen. Tech Talk. So, the topic of AI is so contentious, and I feel like I'm stuck in this world where there are two kinds of people in the world. There's the people telling you that AI is going to be the best thing ever. It's going to make it so you never have to work and money just pours in. It's going to do your dishes and pet your cat for you and all this stuff. And then on the other side, I have the people who are like, AI is going to come into your house and kill everything you love and make you watch. That's it. That seems to be the two worlds of AI out there. And everybody is very passionate about the side they're on. And I am feeling a little bit disoriented because I find myself in the middle. I am trying to look at this thing we call AI, large language models, and seeing what it's good for, what is useful, what makes sense, and where its weaknesses are. And it has plenty of weaknesses. I mean, this thing is not the Star Trek computer. This is nothing that sci-fi has imagined. I don't think sci-fi has ever imagined anything like this that appeared to have so much power and yet was simply wrong so often. But I love it. I love the exploring of this new technology, and it's from a human perspective. This technology is allowing me to explore the human condition in ways that I couldn't before. And it's okay if you disagree with that, and not everyone understands where I'm coming from, and that doesn't matter. But I do want to tell you about one useful thing that I have found for AI technology that some of you might find useful too. Some of you might not, but some of you might. So, a while ago, I don't know how many episodes ago, maybe 50 episodes ago, I played a little joke on everyone where I said, hey, I found a new van life podcast, and here it is. And what it was an AI podcast. And back then, that was kind of an unusual thing, whereas now it's pretty common. I find that I'm driving a lot lately, and I want time to read and research and things like that, and I just don't have it. And I can't trust AI to do that for me. Like if you just pull up ChatGPT and ask it to research something, well, if you ask it for something like the Gettysburg Address, it's going to be pretty accurate. But if you ask it for something more recent, well, you just don't know if it's telling you the truth or not. Sometimes it makes stuff up, and you don't know because you can't control the sources it's using. And so you learn all this stuff, but is it true? You still have to go do the research for yourself to find out. But there is a way around that. And again, it's not perfect. Nothing is. But this is at least as good as a person is, because people are also not perfect. And this is NotebookLM, same technology I used to make that fake podcast a while ago. But the thing about NotebookLM that's different is you are giving it all of its data. I mean, it has some baseline of data, but you feed it data and then you ask it a question, and you have the option to turn that question into a podcast just for you, your own private podcast. And what I've been doing lately is I've been researching things that I'm interested in, often pretty esoteric stuff that, you can't even find YouTube videos on this stuff because no one has thought to research this before. I will go and find the best sources I can, research papers, encyclopedia entries to set a baseline. I'll find some opinion pieces on both sides and throw them in there. And then I will ask NotebookLM to create a podcast about that. And what the podcast is about is actually up to me. I can say, compare and contrast the two sides of this issue. Or I can say, give me an overview of this issue. Or I can say, find correlations between this issue and another seemingly unrelated issue. I could do all those things. And because I'm providing the sources, I know where the data is coming from. And I can then, after the podcast, if I want to, I can go back and interact with the podcast. The podcast has two hosts, a male and a female, and they go back and forth talking about the thing. And then after the podcast is over, you can actually go into NotebookLM and say, hey, that bit about this, are you sure about that? And then the two hosts will say, in a very conversational way, it's like you're having a conversation with them. They will say, yes, this source says that, or no, actually, looked at another way, these two sources conflict with that, and we may have overemphasized this. Whatever. I mean, that's as good as people, in my opinion. And sure, if you get an historian who's got 40 years experience on a particular topic, and that's the topic you care about, you're probably going to get more insight and information from them. But get them to make a personal podcast for you. Go ahead and try that. I don't think that's an option. I have been using this to entertain myself while I'm driving. And that, to me, is a huge value. I often will sit in the car driving, and I'll find podcasts and listen to them, but I'll have this question. What about this? Like, here's an interesting example. There's this thing called crown shyness in trees. If you have a forest of trees, the trees won't touch each other. If you take an aerial photo, there is a thin layer between the trees, between the leaves. Like, they won't let the leaves touch each other. So if you have an oak tree growing next to a maple tree, they won't let their leaves touch each other. And you can see this in patterns from the air. And it's like, why not? Not only that, how are they knowing that there's another tree there? What is actually causing this gap? Pretty esoteric thing, but something I'm actually interested in because it's a mystery. I would like to try to solve it, or at least see what other people are thinking. I am not an arborist or a botanist, and I don't have the ability to do research to solve this, but I'm curious about it. That's the perfect thing to do this with, because there's different opinions. There's a lot of research on it, and you can find all that on the internet. Put the articles into NotebookLM. There's just a plus button. You hit plus, and then you can add YouTube videos, PDFs, news articles, websites, or just text. If, for example, a website's behind a paywall and you can't link it directly, you can copy the text from it and put it into NotebookLM and do that. And then it will generate a podcast. It'll do a bunch of other things too, but I'm specifically interested in the podcast parts. It makes infographics and videos and things like that. I am less interested in those. Those use a generative AI that's speculative, so they puts in images that, I don't know, they're not accurate enough for me to be interested in. But the podcast is excellent. I find it very educational, and what I've been doing lately, just as a simple application, is I'm going on all these trips to all these places. I will feed it travel guides for all these places and then have it synthesize the parts of the travel that I care about. For example, I don't care about nightlife because generally when I'm doing these trips, I'm on a ship and I'm not there at night. But I do care about what's close to the ship, what's unusual, things like that, what scams to watch out for, all those kind of things. And I can query it like that, and I will get a podcast tailored to me just about that content. I love this stuff. I think it's great. I wish I had had this my entire life. Other people find it completely disgusting and horrible and bad for the environment, etc., etc. And there are definitely lots of concerns about this. I could talk a very long time about those concerns. I'm not ignoring them. I am balancing them. For me, this is a very useful thing, and I thought I would share that with you. And if you think it's horrible, that's fine. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. But if you think it's interesting, just sign up NotebookLM, notebooklm.google.com. It's free. Of course, you pay more, you get more, etc., etc. But boy, it's an amazing research tool, and I love it. And it is genuinely useful thing that AI does beyond all the hype. Ignore the hype on both sides. This is a genuinely useful thing that AI does, and I think some of you might like it too. Product review. This is the XKASE Survival Gear. XKASE is spelled XKASE. So, it's a plastic box, and it's roughly the size of a large sandwich, say triple stacked ham on rye. And it's not something you should buy. No, this is going to be an interesting product review because while I don't recommend this product, I recommend you look at this product because it's an interesting exercise. So the idea behind this thing is it's a plastic box that you carry with you or you throw in your car, and it's full of survival tools. Not the stuff you're going to use every day, but the stuff that, things are bad, maybe I need this kind of a box. And it's terrible. I mean, it's not terrible, but it is missing so many elements of survival. So let me tell you about this thing. I'm actually going to go through it with you live, as I open it up here. So it's a plastic case, sturdy plastic case that's black, which, number one, I think that's dumb. I think it should be orange or yellow or something very visible. And it is basically like a little fishing tackle box. It's got 4 different latches. You flip them up, and then it's got that hinged plastic that will break in time. There's a little bit of padding at the top that you could use as a sponge, I suppose, but that is not on the official list of things that it comes with. So that's the thing about these kits. You have to think beyond the purposes of the things. You have to think what you can use them for. So this padding at the top that comes out, to me, that's a sponge. And I would use that in a survival situation the way I would use a sponge. But let's look at the instructions here. Okay, so the instructions are this little folded piece of colored paper here. And as you may have guessed, this is made in China. And opening the instructions, well, let's see. What's inside the XKASE Survival Kit? Okay, number one thing is a survival knife, a high-quality survival knife for any purpose. And it looks like, it's a serviceable knife. It's a folding knife with a pocket clip. It has a seat belt or cord cutter as well. Just a knife. It's got a sharp point, and it does look like it has serrations. So, okay, that looks like a decent thing. Next to that is the survival tool fork. It's actually more like a spork. I would call it a spork. But the description gets a little strange here. It says, it opens fish maws. M-A-W-S, which is a mouth. Opens fish maws? Scrapes fish scales. Okay. And then I don't know what this is. Neal, N-E-A-L, Neal Hranches. H-R-A-N-C-H-E-S. Neal Hranches. I do not know what that's supposed to be. I'm going to assume it's something branches, but I don't know. And then it says rice spoons, which it's just a spoon, okay. Whistles. It's a whistle? I don't know. A bottle opener, okay. And then make fish spears, because one end of this thing is like a knife. So if you imagine a spork that the bottom end is carved into a knife, that's kind of what this thing is like. I don't know that I would use it as a fish spear, but, I could use it to cut sticks into a fish spear. There is a tactical pen, which is this is one thing I actually already have, made of tungsten steel. It's not, just the very tip is. It has excellent strength and portability for breaking windows, glass, and escape in an emergency. Yeah, it's a very chunky pen that has a clip, and one end has a sharp tungsten point that you could use to break out a window or to defend yourself, I guess, if you had to. You twist the end, and it's got a Parker-style pen that comes out of it. I don't know if that's necessary in a survival kit, but it's not a bad thing to have. It has a flint stone and scraper. Yeah, well, it's a fire starter. It's a magnesium rod with a scraper, and the scraper can also open bottles. In fact, there are several bottle openers in here because apparently that is a big survival problem. Oh my God, I'm going to die because I can't open a bottle. And the magnesium is covered with a fire retardant, which is a good idea. So these magnesium fire starters, you basically build a fire, and then you scrape some of the magnesium off into the bottom of the fire, and then you create a spark, and it will light. That's the idea. And it works pretty well. These things work, but they're covered in a coating. You have to scrape off the coating first because magnesium corrodes very easily. Okay. Has a credit card knife. This is one of those credit card tools you've probably seen. It has a bottle opener and a can opener and a knife and some almost useless wrenches and a saw. And this is not something I think is terribly useful in here. It does have some paracord wrapped around it, but and this one is black, which I think is silly. One of the useful things of these things is that they're chrome, usually, and you can use them as mirrors to flag somebody down. Not necessarily. 2 carabiner clips. Okay, sure, you can use them. It says you can use them to fashion dog leashes, carry keys in a survival situation. Water bottles, camping gear, ideal for hiking, camping, and other outdoor activities, whatever. Carabiners are fine, although in a survival situation, I think you would actually want a real carabiner, one that can hold your weight. These are not that kind. Has 4 emergency blankets. Okay, this is actually very valuable. These are those thin Mylar blankets. You see them wrapped around marathon runners at the end of the race and such. These are good things to have, and having 4 of them is good because you could actually make a shelter out of these. Now, I haven't opened it up to see how big it is, and it doesn't say how big it is. But you could put this on the wet ground and lay on it. It's reflective, so it would attract attention. You can use it to keep yourself warm, although it's not great at that, and it's certainly not comfortable. But just having that much material is a good thing, so I approve of that. It comes with a flashlight. Okay, good. 3 lighting modes, such as high, low, and strobe. Uses a AA battery, which is not included. Okay, there's something. Battery-powered tools and survival kits are generally not a good idea, but if you're going to have them, you should have them with their batteries and extras, and the battery should not be in the tool, in my opinion. It has a 4-in-1 survival bracelet. This is a paracord bracelet with a clip, and it has a compass and a whistle. It's 2 whistles, and a metal thing. I don't know what the metal thing is, and it doesn't tell me. It looks like a spur. Let's see. Let's try the whistle. Okay, it's not much of a whistle, but it has one. The compass. Actually, the compass is pointed in the right direction. Okay, we'll give them credit there. The other thing that's on here that doesn't mention is there's another fire starter built into this. Oh, now I understand. Okay, it doesn't say this in the instructions, but this bracelet has a fire starter built into it. And that metal thing that looks like a spur is what you scrape the fire starter with. This is probably a sparker. That is actually not terrible. However, as been the case with almost all of these, does it fit around my wrist? Could I actually wear this? Let's see. Okay, I did manage to get it on my wrist. Yeah, honestly, I could actually wear that. So, okay, that's pretty good. Comes with fishing package suits, including fishing line, hook, and bait. So what it is it's a single fish hook, a single rubber worm, and some fishing line. The fishing line is good. The hook is good. I would rather have more hooks than that lure thing because it's not that hard to find bait. I mean, a spider can be bait. It really isn't that hard to find bait in a survival situation. If there's fish there, there's bait. That's almost always the case. Comes with an upgrade compass. So there's the compass on the bracelet. There's another metal compass that actually glows in the dark. So that's good. This is a bigger compass. This is actually I'd say reasonable, useful compass. It's brass, which I think is weird. And it does have a knob that you can turn so you can set your course, which is good. Like, if you want to go 160 degrees with one of these compasses, what you do is you make sure that the arrow is pointing to north, but then you can follow the 160 degrees that you can turn around. So that's useful. It has a cover. It's a compass. It's a compass that is useful. I don't think it's the best one they could have put in there. It comes with a keychain screwdriver. Well, this is just basically 2 little screwdrivers on a keychain. One is Phillips and one is flathead. They're fine. They're not that useful. It's good for maintaining electronic devices, which is an odd thing for Survival Kit. Comes with some 550 paracord, although they took out the middle of the paracord, which is interesting. So paracord has a core, and it's gone, which makes this much easier to store in here, but it's not the same kind of stuff. But that's okay. That's a good thing to have. Has a water bottle buckle. So this is a thing that goes around your belt, and it snaps on and off, and then you snap it off, and then you wrap it around the neck of your bottle, snap it back on, and then you can carry your bottle by your waist. Not a useless thing. I'm not sure what it has to do with survival. An emergency whistle. Well, got to have more than one whistle, I guess. This is a much bigger whistle that I'm assuming is going to be much louder. Let's see. Okay, that's not much of a whistle either. That's interesting. Why? That could have been much, much better whistle. Why do that? I mean, seriously, if you're going to have a whistle for a survival situation, you want a really loud whistle, and this is not that. So that's just a fail. Whistle, good idea. That whistle, bad. A wire saw. Okay. These things have been in survival kits forever, and this is basically 2 keychains with a wire in the middle. And the idea is that you put your fingers in the keychains and then wrap the wire around a branch and go back and forth and saw through the branch. They do kind of work, but typically once, and then they break. So that's not a terrible thing to have, but I don't know exactly how useful that's going to be. There's actually a lot of keychains in here. These split ring keychains, I mean, there's so many, I don't know that you actually need all that many. And that's it. That's what comes with this thing. And there's another sponge at the bottom. Okay, so that's the whole package here. Now, looking over this stuff, I can see there's some definite deficiencies, which I've mentioned. Another deficiency is that the lock blade on the knife doesn't work, I just noticed. That's dangerous. That is bad. It's okay to have cheap stuff sometimes, but the lock blade on this knife is deficient, and that is no good. I will actually throw this knife away if I can't fix that, so that's bad. Another big fail on this kit is the box. The box is plastic, okay, that's fine. But you can't cook in it. There's no reason this box couldn't be metal. And imagine that if you had a water source but you needed to boil it, one of the big things you're not going to have is a container to boil water in. If this was a metal box, you could absolutely boil water in it. And it's big enough that you could probably have a day's supply of water in it. So that's a big fail there. And what about getting water? There's no water purification tablets, and there isn't even a solar still, except that there is. These blankets you could make a solar still out of. However, how would you know how to do that? That's the biggest thing this thing's missing. There's no manual. There's no instructions. There's no information. And that's why I don't think this is a good thing to buy. But I think it's a good thing to look at. Because you can use these contents to think about the problem of having a survival kit and build your own. Use a metal box, for example. Find a small wilderness survival book that you can put in here. It's got a pen. That's great. There's no paper. Like if you were going to leave notes for somebody, what are you going to write on? There's a whole bunch of very practical things that are missed in here. And I understand what this is. This is just a Chinese box of trinkets. That's what it is. And that's fine. I don't even think it's a terrible value because individually all these things are probably worth more than the contents. But in a survival situation, you absolutely need stuff that will work. And I think a lot of the stuff in here actually won't work. So like, for example, the spork doesn't work. Now the spork itself is very heavy duty. It's metal, but it has a plastic sheath over the knife, and that's actually where the whistle is, and I can't get it off. And it's covering a knife. So, I got it off. Whew. It's covering a knife, so if I do it wrong, I'm going to cut myself, because the knife isn't that sharp, but it's sharp enough. So that's the idea, is if you want to use it as a fork or a spoon, you put the plastic cover on it, and then the knife doesn't cut you. I don't know, it's kind of weird. And here's that whistle. Yeah, that's the whistle. Seriously. Oh, there you go. Oh boy, that's going to attract all kinds of attention. That was the actual volume. I didn't mute that or anything for the podcast. Anyway, I don't mean to pick on this, except that I actually do. Survival kits like this, in fact, don't ever buy a survival kit is my advice. Don't ever buy one. Build one. Go on Amazon and look at all the survival kits, and then think about all of them and what you should have, and then go to a reputable hiking website or something like that and find their list of survival gear. And yeah, they're going to be trying to sell you stuff and all that, so you got to be careful. But what do you actually need in survival gear? What is your goal? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to be more comfortable for a night? Or do you just want some stuff in your van in case you run out of something? Or are you actually trying to survive for a long enough period of time in the wilderness that someone will rescue you, or you'll get yourself to rescue? Think about those things, do research on it, and then build your own survival kit. I am a fan of having the survival kits. I am going to put this in my truck, but the implementation here is nowhere near as good as one that you could do yourself, possibly for even less money. And don't get the cheapest thing that will do the job. Get the best thing that will do the job. The idea that of having cheap stuff in a survival kit is that you're probably never going to use this stuff. But boy, when you want to use it, you want it to work. And folks, I'm going to end the podcast there. Thank you very much for listening to episode 297. If you need to get a hold of me for any reason, I am jeff@builttogo.com. That's 2 T's, not 3, not 1. Music, as always, is by Simon Wagg. Until next time, remember the words of Rumi, who said, "Carry the burden smilingly and cheerfully, because patience is the key to victory."